Thank you for joining us. My name's Patty Dow, and I'm the Member Service Specialist and your host for this morning. Today, we're talking about leadership and mental readiness that comes along with leadership positions. It's been a tough year for all of us, but especially for our leaders who've had to keep their chins up, inspire their teams, and make those tough decisions. So to support our leaders, our guest today will guide us through some mental readiness and exercises and some training. Thank you all to everyone who submitted questions for our presenter. When we get to the end of the presentation, feel free to type in any other questions in the Q&A box, or simply you can raise your hand because we are allowing your videos and your mics to be on today to be able to interact with Chris. So our presenter today is Chris O'Brien with Ridgeback Security. He's a certified Government Canada mental readiness instructor, and he's the president of Ridgeback Security. He's also a 13-year member of the Canadian Armed Forces Military Police Branch. He has an impressive resume, and we're very pleased to have him with us today. His resume on instructional experience, varied leadership and staff positions in the unit and branch levels. He's been deployed to Afghanistan as a mentor to the Afghan National Police in 2010. And in 2014, he qualified as a close protection operator. So welcome, Chris, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you everyone for showing up. I see right now we have 21 people, so that's great, especially after a long weekend. So if you have questions, like they said, by all means, type it in the chat or just stop me. I can't see anyone right now, so if you just speak up, ask a quick question, I can stop there and address it. So for this presentation, it's going to be a snapshot of our full mental readiness for leaders program that we have. We have one for geared towards employees, and that's actually our first part. And this one is the second part that builds on it, and that's more for leaders. So what we're going to do is an overview of the multiple things. We're going to dive into a few points, but just know that this mental readiness for leaders, that when we do present it, it's actually a few hours long, a lot of scenarios and in-depth interactive situations as well. So for myself, I got a quick introduction there. I have been with the military for 13 years. I've taught over 22 courses with the military. I currently lead over 35 people, and I've been in command of people since I was 20 years old. So my partner as well is an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, and he has a magnitude of experience in those departments as well. So I'm younger than what most people expect in this environment and for the security and the mental health aspect of it, but the experience that we have, I think that you can't put a number on it with age, because we've been exposed to a lot. We've seen a lot of personal and professional issues. We've dealt with them. We've seen great leaders, poor leaders, and everything in between. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about mental health and the big four, the roles of leaders with mental health, and some leaders' actions, the SHIELD Sense Support model. So it is geared towards leaders. And this is actually for yourselves as well, not just your employees. So make sure you're actually using this for yourself, because if your mental health is not well, then it's going to trickle down. And that's one big thing for leaders is sometimes they don't take care of themselves. And if you don't take care of yourselves, you can't take care of others. And that's one of the first steps. So here we have a basic performance and arousal chart. So if you look at it, it basically shows that low stress, not enough stress, and way too high stress are both bad. There's no growth, right? We have the no growth in the low stress on the left-hand side. And then if it's too high, we have the weakening and the physical breakdown. What we always shoot for is that optimal stress and performance right in the middle. And now you can see that. We want that medium arousal level, and we want to try to maintain that. And this isn't something that you're always going to be maintained. It's going to go back and forth, but you're always shooting for that medium arousal level. With not enough growth with the low level, we are seeing a bit of that, especially right now with COVID. A lot of people not being able to do things, unemployed, or just can't do things for whatever reason in a one-bedroom apartment, things like that. And that can be just, if not more detrimental than too much stress and a weakening and physical breakdown. So what is stress? When you feel stress, it's perceived low control, usually unpredictability, novelty, and often a threat to your ego. So there's much more that goes into stress, but these are the things that the 4 points that we actually see and focus on. So how do we optimize our mental performance and physical performance for ourselves and for our people below us? Knowledge and training, skill application, and the recovery and bounce back. One thing that we see in the business world is a lack of the training to go with it. And by training, it doesn't mean a briefing such as this. It means situational training, even for the job that they have, to practice getting very stressed out, right? Putting them in those training situations where it's not real life, whether they're a salesperson, an account manager, what have you, and give them these scenarios so that if they're feeling this stress, it's only in a practice situation. When they see the real thing, they're going to react a lot better. And that comes with time and exposure, because you can't just do it once and think it's going to stick. You need to continue that, because with your mental performance goes into the performance that they have in the job. So if you can mentally prepare them for tasks that might be outside of their realm, or if they don't have enough experience in that, you train them. And if you do that, and you do that constant exposure, once they see the real thing, especially if it's higher towards the stress level on that chart, they're going to have a better understanding what to do, and they're going to keep a more level head. That goes hand in hand with the skill application that you have for it as well. If you're using the skills that they have from the knowledge, and you make them and you reiterate that they're going to be using these skills in their training, again, they're going to know what to do for it. The recovery and bounce back aspect of it. You have to have principles in place to assist those with the recovery and bounce back. If they lose a big sales deal, if people have to get let go from a department, you have to address it, and you have to have a plan for the bounce back. You can't just let it go by the wayside and say that it's done with for that. So what we have here is the YouTube video from Kyle Harrison, the mental preparation. It didn't work for the in bed right now, so hopefully this will work. It's about a 2-minute video on how an Olympic athlete prepares for her events.
The world of knife defense is packed with the dumbest techniques in all of martial arts, the vast majority of which will probably get you killed on
Minus
top of
the video. Can everyone see this?
Yep, we can see it.
For me, mental
Okay.
preparation. So for me, mental preparation is, like I said, it's just as important as the physical preparation. You know, I don't skip days at the gym, and I don't skip days of working out my mind. So it can be anything. I mean, I focus a lot on visualization and positive thinking. So my only goal has been to be world champion and to be Olympic champion, and then 2-time Olympic champion. And I think about those things every night. I have a mental highlight reel of me winning the Olympics and then doing it again. And I have every night in my mind, I go through who I'm going to fight. And every night in the final, it would be someone different. Sometimes it would be Audrey. Sometimes it would be Myra. You know, every single night, I put my body in that feeling of being in an Olympic final and feeling those nerves. But I also have like a mantra. So every tournament, I love like rituals. So I'm a creature of habit. So that's why I say like my coaches have me fight a lot, because then I get in the habit of winning. Winning is a habit. So at tournaments, I always say the same thing to myself. I always say, this is my day. This is my purpose. I'm not afraid to win. Kayla Harrison, Olympic champion. And then in Rio, I said, Kayla Harrison, 2-time Olympic champion. But just thinking positively, you know, it's scary. A fight is scary. To go out there and face someone and to know that it's just you and them, and they have great judo and you have great judo, but only the best is going to win that day, can be very nerve-wracking. And it's easy to let the negativity slip in. It's easy to say like, well, what if I lose? Who will I be if I lose? Like, especially for me, going into the Olympics in Rio was such a mentally taxing time for me, because I was like, who am I going to be if I'm not Olympic champion? What would happen? But you can't let those negative thoughts creep in. So every time a negative thought would creep in, I just kill it with a positive thought. No, Kayla Harrison, Olympic champion. I'm not afraid to win. I'm the best. 4 hard minutes to win, 1 grip at a time, 1 exchange at a time, 1 breath at a time, 1 throw at a time, you know, over and over and over again until I finally am so pumped up and so I believe it. I start to believe my own self-talk.
Just trying to get this back into the full screen, and I'm not sure why it's not going back right now. Can everyone still see the PowerPoint? I've lost my option to make it full screen again.
Yep, we can see
Yes,
the
we can
PowerPoint.
see.
Having some interesting technology issues this morning, everyone. Things have been going wrong since about 8 a.m.
If you want to stop sharing your screen and start again, that might reset it.
Okay, just give me 1 second. No. It looks the exact same.
Looks better for us, I think.
Does it look full screen on your end?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, perfect. That's all that matters. I'll do that
That's for
again.
me at least.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, are you using a browser to demonstrate your PowerPoint?
Yes, it
Okay.
wouldn't. We were having some issues with it earlier.
Just try and do that. Just try and see if it works. Maximize. On a browser, you always
So that looks full screen, everyone?
it's not a full screen, but you can use maximize on the right if you have like, you know, the close, minimize and maximize. Do you have that?
No, it's not. It's not giving me the full screen option for some reason here. Added a second ago. I'm going to carry on if everyone's good with that. Technology has been quite interesting during COVID. So with that video, a lot of videos that we see and a lot of people that are more motivational speakers or mental health, they seem to be UFC fighters, military personnel, things like that, people that are physically active. I'll tell you one thing right now for myself, when I was in the military, I've used these tactics that you see in front of you, the goal setting, tactical breathing, visualization, self-talk. I have been in combat. I have been shot at. And what was scarier for me was going into sales. When I went from the military to sales, it was harder for me. It was a huge adjustment. It was something that I'd never done before. It was very taxing. And I actually used the big four a lot more. I'd use it a lot more now using starting a business than I did in the military, honestly, because I had more of a team around me in the military who could also watch this. And now, luckily, I have a business partner now. It's the two of us, right? So we have to rely on each other for all of this. If you have that team, make sure that you're actioning the big four. Get people to start setting goals, tactical breathing, visualization. Our initial employee one is almost entirely on this with the actual skills to actually do this. And we break it down step by step. We get people to write it down and we get them to set the goals and they're going to put it in their office. And it's all about how to do this, whether it's in a situation, before a situation, or after a situation, because there's different things that you can do in those different environments and how to actually reset yourself even before you walk into that meeting. And here's what everything is based on for us. The mental health continuum model. And this is going to go into the leadership and the roles of leaders that go into this. So I'm not going to go line by line right now with this, with the mental health continuum model, but have a read through it. You can see from healthy physical well-being is good energy levels, socially and physically active. We get to reacting, trouble sleeping, displaced sarcasm. Then we get to injured. You see more of a withdrawal and avoidance, increased alcohol use, gambling, other vices, even video games are a huge one, especially during COVID right now. especially with the younger generations. Anger, anxiety, sad, hopeless. And then we get to the extreme. We get to ill, which is angry outbursts, depressed, suicidal thoughts, can't fall asleep, sleeping too long, not going out, basically, not going to work even at that point, showing up to work and not being able to perform whatsoever. And usually when we see ill at that point, people are ideally getting treatment. And now it's, what do you do in the office? What are you going to do along the whole spectrum? How do we try to make sure that people are always going to be in the healthy? And I'm here to tell you, it's almost impossible. And this spectrum swings by the minute, by the second, hopefully not to the ill, but it can be even based on a situation, right? Like I said, a big meeting. A lot of the time, you're not going to walk in there completely normal. You're going to be a little stressed out. That's fine, but you need tools to get back to healthy, right? We can't keep building and building and building, because if we don't have those tools and don't use those tools, that's where we start progressing along this spectrum where we can't easily pull ourselves back or have others pull ourselves back. And that's where we get to things, maybe even people ending up in mental health hospitals, things like that, right? We want to avoid that. We want to take care of our people. So we're going to talk about how to address it, how to see it, things you can do quickly, and how to actually go above and beyond in the office, because any performance starts with mental health. A lot of people say it's other things. From what I've seen, I've taught hundreds of people, I've led hundreds of people. It starts with mental health. It solely does. And if you address it even up front and make it not a big deal in the sense that they can come forward to you, your office, your world is going to become completely different. In the military, I pride myself on the people coming up to us. We have very good policy with that in our regiment. And we had people come up to us a lot, more than I ever even thought, because we pushed that mentality of coming forward and it's no big deal. Starting off with my own experiences, and as a leader, share your experiences as hard as it is. Like I said, from the sales side to being in Afghanistan, two different stressors significantly, two different reactions from myself. And I've had to go get therapy for some of the stuff for it. And when I tell people this, when I teach the courses, I'm still in, I'm actually starting businesses, and I'm using the tools to actually go ahead and push forward past it. It's not always easy, but you can do it, and you got to keep working at it. And if you're telling people that, and you explain this spectrum to them, and that you can pull yourself back to healthy, right? Or we can assist you to get back there. We just don't want to ever see you get stuck at injured or ill. And when you don't get treatment, you don't talk to your people, that's where we start seeing those sometimes irreversible effects that can lead to very serious things. So here's the model simplified. Good mental health, normal functioning, common and self-limiting distress and reacting. Injured, more severe functional impairment. Ill, diagnosable mental illness, severe and persistent functional impairment. So where does it come in from a leadership standpoint? There's 3 points that we're going to really cover for leadership: shield, sense, and support. So off that spectrum, again, that's a 4-hour class, pretty much with that, and a lot more tools with it. We're going to kind of get into more of the leadership. So we're going to start off with the shielding tools. So it's going to be tools and advice and tactics throughout this spectrum. So the shield is going to be your foundation of your mental wellness. What is it? It's something that you actually have to sit down and think about your environment, the office that you're in, and think about how you can better it, and just start writing things down. And you can use a lot of these points right here. The realistic training. Again, that's not just mental health training like this, that's training for the environment that you operate in. Give them a mock massive deal for a salesperson. Put them into roles that may be a role above them that they've never done something before for practice. Get them to do something on the side, a side project. Present it to people. Present it to their team. Get that confidence up. Push people, but in a controlled setting. So that way, when they see it in the real world, in your business, in your environment, they're going to be able to control themselves ideally a lot better. And again, it has to be repetition. Fostering a healthy climate, that starts with leadership. That starts with not letting things slide when you address it. It starts with having visual aids around with numbers that they can call, services they can do. If you have morale days, morale nights, it's hard right now with COVID. I know a lot of people are doing like Zoom drinks or coffee or tea on Fridays with their team because they're not even in the office with them and they miss them. So that's a good thing that people are doing right now. Leadership and cohesion. Again, that's all the leaders. If there's no cohesion, we have to address it. It's your job to make sure that cohesion's there, that teams are functioning as they should function. And sometimes you have to switch people around just to make sure that it's going to work. If any of you watch hockey, not every all-star plays on the same line. It's not going to work. You can't have a full line of Sidney Crosby's, right? You need other players on your team. So if people aren't working well, try to address it and try to fix it. If it's not going to fix, sometimes you have to switch people around, and that's the end of it, because it can cause more harm than good at the end. And responding to potentially traumatic events, whether it's in a person's personal life, whether it's at work, anything along those lines, you need to address it. The hardest thing is to address something like this too. No one likes pulling people into the office, having a group conversation or a one-on-one. It's something that I had to get very comfortable with. It was definitely not my cup of tea when I started, especially when I was younger. I've had to be 23 sitting in a room with a 45-year-old listening to their personal problems. I have no kids. I'm 23. He's got a wife and 4 kids. He's doing basic training. His wife might leave him, all these things. And I'm 23 years old. And I'm the one giving the advice because I'm the one that has the courses and I'm in that power position, that position of power. So I learned quick how to talk to people, how to deal with people, and everything in between. And I'm very grateful for that. So when you're responding to those traumatic events, A, do it, and B, understand them as you should know them and where they're coming from. So what we're gonna look at really quick, again, not gonna go through all of these line by line for time right now, but we would, is the 12 principles of leadership. If you can write this down and put it on your desk somewhere, you're gonna be off to the races. I'll tell you right now. The mental health continuum model and these 12 principles of leadership, if you can have those as aids with you, you're going to be in a very good spot. And I mean, have it on your desk, have it somewhere visual, have it on a sticky note. Don't write it down and put it in your drawer, because more often than not, when you come back from an argument or a discussion that went wrong, or you just lost a deal, anything, and someone just quit, even for yourself or for others around you, look at these 12 principles and look at the mental health continuum. Excuse me. Because if you tee those two up, like I said, you're going to be ahead of a lot of people, because it's these 12 principles are what the Canadian forces and many other militaries around the world in almost the same context follow. And we have to memorize it as leaders. And it always talks about solving the problems, making timely decisions, training people, being the leader yourself, right? That's one of the biggest things. If you're the leader, you put yourself in the shoes of those below you and above you, and you have to solve those issues. So when we're talking about fostering a healthy work environment, here's some of the things. And so this is just kind of going off what we were talking about earlier. Encourage communication. We already talked about training. Difference between work that is essential and work that can wait. And we see that a lot with people, perfectionists, people that don't know how to handle their workload. They think the second they get something, they got to jump on and do that. They don't know how to prioritize. They don't know what's essential. And that causes a lot of people a lot of stress. So if you're the one that's going to kind of lay it out for them, the essential parts, and give them even a percentage of what needs to be done for those categories, their stress levels are going to be a lot better because they're going to know what they need to get done. Facilitating work-life balance, that's been in the news again because we're all working from home and they're saying some people are working less. A lot of people are stressing themselves out and not disconnecting because they're at home. Delegate, delegate, and delegate. For leaders, if you try to do everything to yourself, you're going to fatigue yourself and you're going to wear yourself out. You have to train the people around you to do what you would like them to do. It may not be how exactly you would do it, but you need to delegate and train them to achieve your standards in their ways. And that is essential. We're not able to replicate ourselves. We have to understand how those around us execute their jobs and then guide them to make sure that they have the outcome that we want, the company wants, the business wants. So as you can see, we keep talking on realistic training. Realistic training is a cornerstone of any business. So if you're putting people in these situations, you're doing your business and your organization a massive service. And I don't think it's done enough. In the military, we do it constantly, putting people outside of their comfort zone, but in those roles, in those practice environments, right? It decreases the novelty of the events, decreases stress levels. It's challenge and opportunity. If you do after action reviews with them, with a group, right? You hit points that are good, points to improve. We don't call them bad points, points to sustain, points to improve. And you can even do it in a group setting with your team. The first couple of times people may not like that, but once they understand that we're not just sitting there laughing at each other and doing it, everyone in that room is going to be taking things away. So if you're putting people in those training or groups of people or teams in those realistic training environments, share the learning with everyone else on the team, right? Learn that way. People are going to also learn to accept healthy criticism and healthy support and not just get really upset if someone's telling them something. It also teaches those in the team and in the group how to support people and how to even address their faults or points that they need to improve on in respectful manners, which is something that's also getting very difficult today with social media. So having those face-to-face interactions and having those group presentations, it's really good. And having one-on-ones, of course, and giving them more direct feedback is always essential. And it just improves everything, their skills, their confidence, their mental health, everything. And it's all about how you lay out that training. And based on your business and your environment, that's how you're going to decide the training that's required. So what do we do after an event? It's okay to be distressed. It's okay not to be distressed. Different people react differently to different situations all the time. I've seen people that can, in the military, lead people yelling and screaming through the field, and you put them in front of a classroom with a PowerPoint and they can't talk. Not everyone has the same strengths, just like not everyone's going to be distressed by a situation, or they will be. But when it does occur, play the what if game. Play how it could have gone better, what the normal thoughts, normal processes are. If you find resolutions or come to terms with it, of course, that's good. And keep ruminating. If you keep ruminating, get help. Okay. So it's okay to think about, oh, I could have done this. I should have done this. I did do this well. Maybe next time I should have done that. When that starts to take over your life, though, and we start to see that progression along the continuum, that's where we're going to start seeing issues, right? And that's what we don't want. We don't want to have people keep ruminating. Looking back, perfectly fine. But if it started affecting your daily life, then we need to look at it from a different perspective. Maybe you need to get some help. Maybe you just need to talk to someone in the office. Maybe you need professional help. But just know that that wouldn't be normal if it's ongoing for a long time. Excuse me. So what does ad hoc mean? Does anyone actually know? Does someone want to tell me what ad hoc means?
As and when required or immediately.
Exactly. It's Latin for like right now. Okay. Again, going back to what I was talking about with a lot of people, with a lot of leaders, and it has to do with a lot of lack of training, I'll say sometimes in leadership, and it's not comfortable. But if something happens, if it's a group, if it's a person, whether it's a dispute in the office, whether I keep going back to like a sale loss, because that's what I'm used to, right? Losing sales, then you have to address it, right? Especially if you know the people and you can tell. But as soon as something happens, like I said, a dispute in the office, we'll use that example, you have to address it, right? If it's one-on-one, if it's all the individuals affected, that's your call as a leader and knowing the people. But sometimes a quick mediation with those people is required. Sometimes it needs to be a group of people, but you need to address it. If a member from your office got in a car accident and was in the hospital in severe condition, right? You want to tell your team. You want to pull them in. They could be very close. They could be best friends in the office. Maybe they don't know that they just got in the car crash in there. Take them all in, let them talk about it, hear what they have to say about it. If it's going to affect them, let them know that you're there for them and they can come forward to you. So this works in any model for it. But if you're able to address it and actually sit down with that person or persons, depending on the situation, it's going to go a long way with them resolving it and helping them not think about it constantly as well, right? So if you can address it, let them know, talk about it right then and there, let them know that you're there for them, you're going to have a lot easier time, and then they're going to have a lot easier time. Frequently after doing these ad hocs in my career, I've been thanked, not immediately after, a day or 2 days, 3 days later. And a lot of people say, like, I've never had someone pull me in like that after a situation, whether it's physical, mental, it doesn't matter. If you see something, pull someone aside and talk to them. So, or the group. And it's not about the thank yous. I'm saying the thank yous because that's how we know it works. That's the reason I'm telling you about the thank yous. So address situations immediately, as hard as it is. It's very uncomfortable. You can get used to it, but you won't always be 100% used to it. For me, I don't enjoy it, but it needs to be done depending on the situation. Generally, it's not a positive situation when you're doing an ad hoc, but it needs to be done. It's very uncomfortable for me, but I know it needs to be done, so we do it. So what are you going to be doing? Acknowledge and listen, inform, normalize the reactions, and reinforce your positive and individual coping strategies. With some of the tools that we have and that we teach on, you can use those. And then, of course, respond, observe, and follow up. The observation and follow-up is essential, because some people address it and they go, oh, it's fine. And they don't pick up that maybe Susan is still not, she's showing up 15 minutes late for work now, and she used to show up 15 minutes early, and this has been going on for a month now, and she just doesn't seem to care, right? So you need to make sure that you keep those observations and keep following up with your people. So the next one is that we're going to get to is the sense. Is there any questions before we get onto sense for the shield aspect of it? I know we're going through it. This is a long presentation in 45 minutes, but is there any questions at all thus far before we keep going? Okay, carrying on. So with the sensing actions, we talked about the warning signs on the continuum, some leaders actions. We're going to get into more leaders actions coming up. Barriers to care that we see in society and in offices, and then challenging those barriers to care. Challenging those barriers to care, number one is you being the example. You as a leader, if you're the example and you express yourself, express your struggles, and then show them how you continue through it, that's how you challenge barriers in my mind. And expressing them that, like, don't be, if you're struggling, go seek help, go talk to a friend. You can talk to me if you want, just come in. That's my frontline way to challenge barriers, because if you open that up, the barrier is no longer there, because they see people sometimes in those authoritative positions, leadership positions, as people they can't actually approach. And the healthiest climates I've had and the hardest working people I've had are ones that they understand that I'm going to push them. And I tell them a lot of the time, like, today's going to suck, or we got a long day and I'm going to push you. But I'm here for this, this, and this, but we have to achieve this objective by the end of the day. And it's going to be a long one. So if you're even prepping people for something like that, and then they know that it's going to be a stressful day, you're prepping them for it. That way, if they do come forward, you also know that you're not having those barriers there, and that if they are coming forward, it's a legitimate reason, because we're working on preparing our people mentally too, to actually positively push them and take care of them in the workplace to make them better, more efficient people, really. And you can do that in a positive way with mental health. It seems like a weird spin, but by focusing on all of this, the outcomes for your business and your people and their lives in general, personally, are going to increase significantly. It's all connected. So I just threw this in here just in case you wanted a quick recap, because I know we're going fast on this for the healthy, reacting, and injured, because we're going through the shield sense support model, which goes consistent with this continuum. So when we have the shield, we're looking strictly around the healthy area. And then we have the sense, reacting, injured, and ill is where we get to the support. So when you're sensing, or when you're, even if you're not sure something's going on, which can also be very confusing, and you don't want to approach that person, approach them. The only thing that the worst thing they can say is, no, I'm fine, right? The best thing they can say is, you know what, I'd love to talk to you. In that regard, always respect confidentiality. If you are not respecting the confidentiality of your people, you've lost everything that I'm showing you in this PowerPoint, because they will not come forward if they know that it's not going to be confidential. Of course, there's cases that you have to inform people. If it's harm to others, harm to themselves. But for the issues at hand, do your utmost to respect that confidentiality unless you must report it. Listen without judgment. You're there to listen. And if you have to, encourage them to seek care. I always encourage it, even if they don't feel that they need it. I put it in their head right away and tell them that I did too. Keep an eye out for changes in behavior. Offer your support. Consult and discuss with your superiors health services when required. And that's where we get into the ones where you do have a duty to report. Advocate for your subordinates and express sincere concern for their well-being. Excuse me. Those last two are going to be all on the leaders. That's all on you. If you're not pushing up for the well-being of your people, you should be. It's something that you should be advocating and trying to improve consistently. If you're finding new initiatives and new programs, a project, you want to do some training, some realistic training, pass it up. Get the support of everyone behind it, because it's only going to help. So, common barriers to care. Treatment won't help. That's a common one. Too busy, can't be bothered. Another common one. Fear of stigma attached to mental health. I'd say the biggest one, as well with the fear of career consequences, because they go hand in hand. They try to self-manage the situation and confidentiality concerns. So get rid of that stigma. Get rid of that career consequences. Tell them that you want them to be their best so you can come to work and perform. If they're not their best, you need them to be. And that's a positive spin. It's not a negative push. It's what you're actually encouraging them to be doing, right? And you tell them that. I want everyone here to be healthy because I want us to push barriers and I want us to grow. So let's do this together. The self-managed situation is a very common one now as well. There are a lot of apps and everything out there, which are really good, breathing apps, meditation apps, and things like that, but they don't replace any sort of mental health treatment. They just don't. So you need to seek mental health professionals. If you have them in your organization, utilize them. Get them to come in and do some of these exercises, right? If you have HR people that are trained in it, get them to execute some of these things. But you need to remove these barriers from care. That's step one. And address them. You remove them by writing them on a board, on a PowerPoint like this, and talking about them and just telling them openly, get rid of all this, forget about it, right? We're here to take care of you and you're here to take care of us. So how can a leader change and challenge these barriers? A big one is a lot of people stress about even taking time off for appointments. I can't sit here and tell you how to run a business, but people are not going to also take the time to take care of their mental health if they can't get the appointments. And this is one of the biggest things. After working hours, people have very busy lives. It can be even harder for them to do if they have children, a spouse, a second job, or a hobby at home. They need the time and support to go to a mental health professional. And if they don't think they have it or know they don't have it, they're not going to, right? Because they don't want to ask for a medical appointment a lot of the time to even go to the doctor's office. And again, it depends on the organization that you're in. You're not a health professional. You might be in your organization if you're on this call, so it's not geared towards you. If you are not the health professional, you do not diagnose or label. You're there to listen and direct and point them in the right direction and to assist them in their recovery. You're not there to sit there and say, sounds like you have depression, Chris. I don't think you can do your job at the end of the meeting. That would just completely sink someone, right? You're not there to do that. You're there to listen, understand what you can do for them, and understand how to remove the barriers and how to get them support. Do not tolerate rumors or verbal abuse. That can, as we know, that can demoralize anyone. It can actually lead to, it's even in Nova Scotia here, it's actually led to suicides all around the world. And that's just through rumors and verbal abuse, and on social media as well. Education, we've harped on that. Constantly be educating your people and provide the support and openness. And again, respect the confidentiality. If they're coming to you with trust and faith, respect that. If you break that, you have nothing that I can show you here. So for the support, which is the last one of the 3 S's. Talking about mental health, sorry. Do it throughout, right? If you find articles, you can even send emails if you find them, a YouTube video, just make it commonplace. Not commonplace to get to the point where people can't work and they have treatment. Commonplace that they can come forward to you, they can talk to each other, they know there's tools and people around them, so they don't end up having to go off work, right? And they feel supported. Communication plans and strategies up and down the lines of communication. So once we get to the supporting actions in these regards, a lot of people are around the ill lines. So we look at changing their workload, shifting them around, reduced work hours, and you have to inform everyone. At this point now, the business must know if there are some effects, right? If you need to change some hours, and fight for your people and explain, even if you're going higher, that this is a good plan for this person. It's going to keep our productivity X, Y, and Z, and they're going to not still keep going on in the root of their mental health that they are. We need them to get better so we can keep working in the environment that we are, right? We don't want it to get to the point where someone's going off work for that. And offering your mental health resources in and outside of organizations. Like I said, if you have anything in-house, absolutely utilize it. If you're not utilizing it, start. Outside, like I said, you can send the articles, YouTube. If there's events, you can send them stuff for the events. But that's just you giving some advice and stuff for them. Again, opening those doors, right? You're not going to be labeling them and telling them that they need to go do something outside of the organization. You're not going to be doing that. So if you're seeing signs, take action. Encourage the individual to seek help. Again, you're not labeling and telling them, you're encouraging. Have genuine concern for the person. And assertive body language, which is one of the big things. The 7% rule. 7% is spoken word, 38% is voice, 55% body language. And that's how it's going to be interpreted in emotional states for the average person. And that's the rule of 7%. Through body language, you can see stuff. I've seen people worn down. They may be able to talk fine, but like you just look at them and they are worn down, right? Their eyes, their energy levels, you just look at them and you know that they're hitting a wall. Using assertive communication techniques. Open communication, even though you're assertive, and asking how, right? How? If you're asking them how it affects them, how do they feel, stuff like that, like you're just going to get them talking. You're there to listen. Open-ended question, use how and why, right? And that's really going to let you understand that person's situation, and just sit there and have to be in listening. Make sure if you are talking to that individual, you recap when you're done talking to them what you understand, right? That helps them understand that you know their priority pain points, and that they know you understand. So it's very soothing for them to hear, and it's very important for you to know, because that means you're going to know how to assist them going forward. So when we're caring for the injured, establish a work environment that encourages and supports a step forward mentality with no fear. So that's where I'm getting to the point of changing the mental health attitude of getting to the point of ill and then people having to go off. It's awful. It's awful for people and businesses, and we don't want that to happen, right? Never, ever want that to happen in any organization or to any person. So look at it as steps forwards and challenging, like I always said, challenging mental health and opening up your workplace, right? If you open it up and people start thinking lightheartedly about it, even if they have a little mess up, they know that there's no fear in the office. Excuse me. That they don't have to go home at the end of the day freaking out because they don't think Chris and Bill are going to like her anymore because she messed up that deal, right? If you're creating that environment and encouraging those step forward and like, that's good. You know what? You did kind of slip up here and here, but next time you're not going to do that, right? And then they agree, and then you show them, always mentor them going forward and how they're going to do it. And it's not as easy as I'm saying right now in sentences, but you can still a sense of courage, strength, responsibility, and good judgment, for seeking help in times of distress. So tell them how strong they are. Always tell someone how strong they are for seeking help. Always. It goes a long, long way. It makes them feel empowered, and they should be, and it encourages them to keep going forward. Always tell them that they're strong, okay? Always do that. Make support accessible and tangible. Talk to them and listen to what they have to say. Manage unacceptable behaviors, but also provide support. So everything we're talking about is supporting these people. But there's behaviors, no matter what, that are unacceptable. Addressing those in these environments can be challenging. But if you're talking it as in points to improve, points to sustain, points to improve. They're not failures, they're points to improve. If it's behavioral, if it's work related, you have to address them in those positive ways. If you feel like it might come to a confrontation or they might question it, and if it is doable and it's appropriate with confidentiality, have a secondary person in there when you're having those conversations for some unacceptable behavior. That's how we avoid he said, she said, he said, he said, and everything in between. But it has to be appropriate, and the person that you're talking to has to agree to have that other person there. And if you have all those communications open and you have them in there, you have that party that's going to be there for this conversation, and it makes managing unacceptable behaviors a little bit easier, especially if that person's also a leadership person, a mental health person, HR, anything along those lines. But when you're managing unacceptable behaviors, make sure that you're still providing those points to improve, points to sustain. Word it that way. When it gets to another level of unacceptable behavior, you just start, there's warning systems. If anyone's interested in warning systems for things like that, then you can reach out to me after. We have a few methods as well. And always expect them to get better. Always tell them that they're strong and that you expect them to get better. There's many positive ways to tell someone that without spinning it as negative. A lot of people are scared to do this. We think people, when they get to the point of, let's say that they're ill and then they're off work, it gets very difficult at that point. But always tell people that you expect them to get better, because it will motivate them. And don't do it in an angry way. Don't do it in a bitter way. Always put it in a positive light. And you can take those steps to actually introduce them, even through training and scenarios and whatnot, to progressively get better. So they're not going to be overwhelmed, and they start getting that sense of accomplishment back, because that's what's usually lacking in a lot of these situations. The ACE model. If we were in a class, I would ask, before I even put this up, how many people think that you should ask someone if they're suicidal directly? Usually 80% of the people in a classroom will say never ask them. That's not true, actually. Always ask them. I've done it, and I'm pretty sure it saved lives. This is a tricky one for people, but if they're at this point, or you think they're at that point, just ask them, right? A lot of studies have shown that if they are, even without thinking, they'll say yes sometimes. Not everyone, unfortunately. I wish they did. It would help a lot in society, but a lot of people, without thinking, when you ask them that question, will say yes. And when I say without thinking, as in they can't make up their reasoning to say no, because as we know, a lot of people hide it. So always ask. If you believe that it's at that point, always ask the individual. Care for your colleague by listening and understanding, and escort. If it's at this point of suicide, and they do say something along the lines about suicidal thoughts, or they're going to commit it, they have things ready to commit suicide, escort them. At this point, escort them to a supervisor. If you have internal health services, external medical professionals, even the emergency rooms, right? There's a lot of steps you can call for someone that's suicidal, from 911. Even if you call 911, and there are mental health hotlines as well, 911 will also direct you to the proper channels. But make sure that that person is getting the proper care, and don't just walk away from something like that ever. So resources. Again, I would ask people a lot of questions about this, about what yours would be in your environment. A lot of people don't have these. Do you have primary prevention? Do you have frontline? Do you have training for your people, for your leadership? Do you have a bulletin board with different services that are around Halifax, in your office, around the area? A list of mental health providers, anything along those lines, right? Bringing in speakers, guests to talk about it, opening up in the workplace, telling everyone your struggles, or anything along those lines, right? And then we get to the reacting, primary and supportive intervention. That's a little more when you're supporting with that, right? You're going to be in there making sure that you can do the best you can, although you're not a medical professional, to make sure that they're okay, and that you're going to be working at getting them better on your side, and telling them about that. Ill, that's secondary clinical and tertiary resources. That's where we were talking about escorting people, some mental health hospitals. There's a lot of, that's the serious one. When we get there, they could be in clinical, they could be in a hospital, like I said. So that's the higher level treatments. It won't be generally in your organization, but primary prevention and primary and supportive interventions should be. And if they're not, you need to start thinking about how you can put them in there, and in your organizations, how they are a fit. So effective leadership. It's a pretty good line, I'd say, for leadership on this one. The ability to handle crisis because you possess the necessary skills to remain calm and functional when others are rendered confused or overwhelmed. That's your job. It's hard pressed for me to think of an organization or a job where there's a leadership role that this is not what you have to do. With this, everything we talk about on this and the first one that we have for employees is also for yourself as leaders, right? To practice on yourself, to take the skills that you tell other people and to put it on you. Because generally, if you're a leader, you're the business owner, leader comes in many shapes or forms. You're looking out for multiple other people. So who's looking out for you as well, right? You're the calm, cool, collect person that they go to when they go, we got an issue. What's the problem? You're in that role now. So it's your job to remain calm and functional when others are rendered confused or overwhelmed.
Chris?
Yes.
I'm going to let you know we have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, perfect. So I'll probably end on this one here. We'll get to the, we didn't even get to the full roles as leaders, but we'll end on this one here most likely. So leaders, write some of these points down if you can. We're just getting into the more of the leadership steps and roles for that. But again, you are the resilient role model, and it's not easy. So if you're not getting help as well, and if you need it, you're not going to be able to help others. And that's one big point that I'd like you to take away from this. It's actually a detriment to others and yourself and the organization. And I'll say that because I've been that person. So you need to get help if you need it, and it's only going to help you with your team, with your organization and everything. And then, of course, know how to foster resilience in others. Doing it for yourself as well as leaders, you'll start doing it for others automatically because you'll see the benefits. So always emphasize training, team cohesion, willingness to improvise and be flexible, to adapt and overcome. Get rid of those barriers in your office, right? There should be no barriers at all. People should openly talk about it and be comfortable talking about it. I don't mean talking about screaming in the office. I mean coming to you if there is an issue, going to see their manager if there's an issue, right? A coworker, anything. Just having that ability to bite issues for them and for everyone else right away. we want to keep everyone as best we can in that healthy spot. Again, it's a continuum. It changes daily, hourly, by the minute, by the second, depending on the situation and environment you're in. But we don't want to see that ill. Once we start getting up to the ill side, it's very, very hard to come back down the rest of the mental health continuum. So on that note, I'll stop there for this one. So I guess from here, it just froze on this screen. So it's good that we just ended the PowerPoint. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Chris. This has been an enlightening and refreshing take on mental health and the role of a leader in their organization. And I think it's a great way to end your presentation, that it's the leaders themselves have to take care of themselves too, right? It's so important for them to seek out different ways of connecting and de-stressing and understanding everything that we do. So I just want to thank you, Chris, for everything, all your insights this morning. Thanks to everyone who's joining us. We want to make sure that you also know that our next week's talk is about accessibility, because it's National Accessibility Week, and how to learn, or how your business can learn to be more fully accessible, which kind of ties in with our topic today. This webinar has been recorded and will be available on the Chamber YouTube channel, probably by tomorrow. And that's it. That's a wrap. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Chris, for your presentation. Very valuable insights. And we hope to see everyone again soon. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
No problem. Nice to see you there, Connor. I saw you sign in.
Yeah.
Connor,
No, that was perfect.
you were coming on. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was supposed. It's all interactive. Like